Right, what have we got today? Right, well, it's a Nitecore, and I'm a big fan of Nitecore. One of the reasons I like Nitecore is it's more of a premium product. It's not super silly priced, but you generally get a good product. I've never really had any issues with them, and they seem to come up to a good standard. Although some of the prices, I think, good God, I don't know what they've been. I don't know if they've been smoking crack when they came up with that one. But we're going to look at this one today. This is the Tip2. So just for example, here's the original tip. Now the original tip I really liked. I mean, it was a little bit longer than I would have liked for a keychain light, but it's certainly pocketable. It's no worse than what you would find on a fob for your car or something like that. And it's USB rechargeable, just like this. And then it's got your little clip here which covers that. Does a pretty decent job. Never had any bother with this. They had quite an interesting sort of reflector here. It was almost like a sort of a hybrid one, really. It was almost like a frosted sort of optic there with a sort of like a strange reflector, but it gave you a nice even beam. It was actually, they did do a decent job. It was stamped metal. In other words, you take metal and you stamp shapes and then you put it together, whereas this one should be made out of one continuous block of aluminium, or if you're American, aluminum. So Nitecore Tip2, and it's using the Cree XP-G3, and I think it's the S3 LED they've gone for there. So XP-G3, you find that on most keychain lights. In fact, I'll show you a selection later on, but you'll find that most of them use the very same LED. But so what they've done to try and get more of an output is they've used two. So very interesting. There's not a lot to read here unless you're fluent in Mandarin or simplified Chinese text anyway. There's some of the stuff, and here you can see 500 milliamp hours. That's just the size of the battery that's in there. So, but I think they've done a pretty good job. But there's a few things I would maybe change. But let's see what you get in the box. So pull that out. So what's this? So boosh, chuck that in the bin. What's this? Sign your life away for a warranty. No thanks. And then here's the instructions, which I'm not going to go through. In fact, I'll look at them quickly just so I can memorize them. Charging instructions. Right, I've memorized that. Boosh, stick that in the bin. Right. Oh, and some more plastic to destroy the planet. Right, get rid of that. Right, so here's the main unit. I just want to compare that actually, just so you can see. So there's the original tip on the right here, and here's the new one. So as you can see, they've actually shortened it, and you're probably thinking, well, hang on, they look about the same. We haven't got this protrusion. The reason you haven't got this protrusion is they have quite cleverly used a TIR setup here rather than a reflector. Now the reflector here, you can see it's like a little reflective bowl with the LED in the middle, whereas on this one they've put a piece of plastic over the top which spreads the beam probably better for close-up work. But I'll go through that very briefly because I know it annoys people when I talk about reflectors. And you can take this off. This is your clip, but you can take it off and you can reverse it as well, and the buttons still come through the gaps. So in this configuration here, you can, for example, put that on a peak of a cap, and then that points forward. Well, it would actually be under, wouldn't it? There's the peak of the cap, and where you look, the light looks. So some nice features there. So I'll just quickly tell you a little bit about this. So like I say, there's the old one. So very similar, just shorter, and it's actually even more shorter because this is an empty space, but I'll show you that in a second. So what they've chosen to do here is they've used a smooth reflector, and I'm just going to quickly cover this because I want to make sure people understand. So normally you have your LED, and then light comes out willy-nilly, as they say here, goes all over the shop and spills all over the shop. In other words, pretty much like the Nitecore tube here. There's nothing wrong with this, but half that light's coming back on my face. It's not ideal. It's a very simple setup. It's simply a dome of plastic, and light goes all over the shop. Not particularly ideal. So what you can do is you can put a smooth reflector over that, and as I say, I'll show you a quick example of that. So it'll be something similar to this. I mean, this is actually an orange peel, but if you imagine this to be perfectly smooth, what you're actually going for is you're trying to guide the light. So when you've got a smooth reflector, what happens is you get spill, which comes out and hits the wall. You get like a pattern, and then the guided light, which is directed by the reflector, is your spot. So So I'll give you a quick example of that if you wait just a few seconds. There you go. Now this is an extreme example. I mean, look at the size of this, but you can see here you've got the LED and then surrounding it is a smooth reflector. I'm rotating that there, but it doesn't appear to have any bumps in it, does it? So what happens is when you turn it on, you get distinct zones. Now you can see straight away, so here's your spill. This is coming directly from the LED. It's under no particular control. It's willy-nilly. And then there's your spot. There's your directed light. The whole point of a smooth reflector is you're trying to guide some of the light. I mean, it's certainly not like a laser. You can't guide it in a straight line, but you can form it to try and adhere to a pattern that you want. So for example, a smooth reflector is to try and get distance. You're trying to push that light out into a focused beam. Great for distance, but on a light like this, most keychain lights, you're not really after distance, so you're certainly not looking for a part-time job as a lighthouse keeper. So what you can do is you can say, well, look, you can get an orange peel reflector. So this is the ThruNite Ti3, which is a beautiful little light. And as you can see from all the damage on it, if I can get it to focus, I've carried this for many years and I've never had a problem with it. So what happens in this setup is, I shall turn it on a sensible output. So you can see, yes, if I put it in this, you've still got a spot, but see, it's transitioned into the spill there. It's certainly not as pronounced. So it doesn't obscure detail too much, whereas if you compare that to, if I turn this back on, that's completely obscuring detail. You can't even read that text anymore. It's great for distance, but useless up close, whereas this is a little more transitioned. So you've got your LED and then the bulb, but it's bumped. So what happens is when this comes out, you get your spill and your spot, but it's sort of transitioned into each other. You can still see these defined zones, but they're certainly not as apparent. Now what you can do is you can say, well, okay, I'm only going to be interested in close-up stuff. So you can go for what's called a TIR lens rather than a reflector. Now the beauty of a TIR lens like this is you're saving space as well. Instead of having to have this huge bowl, you can just have your LED there, and then over the top, there's a block of whatever medium you've chosen, this optically pure medium. So this lens, it bounces the light around inside, and then it comes out how you dictate based on the design of the structure of the end surface there. So it's called TI, or total internal reflection. In other words, the light's bounced around inside and then it comes out. Now if you have a look, what I'll do is, in fact, I'll show you an example. Here's an extreme example. So this is the Claris Mini one, and there's the LED, and then underneath here you can see is a TIR lens, and you see it's got like a faceted structure on the outside there. So even if I'm putting that in full setting there, now can you see what's happening here? You can just see a sort of a hot spot in the middle there, but the whole thing is one big beautiful transition. In other words, up close it's fantastic. No matter how close or how powerful this is, to a degree anyway, it's not obscuring detail, it's not irritating, and it spreads the light out. It shares the light, and after all, sharing is caring. So they've done that on this. Now the obvious difference here is you're probably thinking, well, they look completely different to do because the surface is different. That's all. They're still TIR, but the surface on this is clear, and it's just, they just want a uniform beam but with a little bit of positioning, whereas this just wants to diffuse it everywhere. So they've gone for a little bit of control, even though this is a TIR. So I'm going to take this off temporarily just so I can show you some of the features. So this comes in a cool white tint. I mean, I prefer a neutral tint. It's closer to sunlight on a warm day, but some people prefer a cool tint. I'm not going to go into tints too much on this because this is a keychain light. If you want to know more about that, you can go to my other reviews to find out about that. So the whole thing, I mean, it's pretty light. I would say it's a little bit heavier than this. It's about 38 grams, which is probably, off the top of my head, that's about 1.3 ounces, I think. I'm not very good with the metric stuff there. Sorry, the imperial. So it's pretty heavy, but it's more robust, whereas this is stamped metal. This is one block, one continuous block. It feels premium. It's got chamfered edges there. I quite like that. And it feels well put together. There's no creaking or obvious parts where it's coming to bits, so pretty nice. I mean, this bit looks cheap as anything. I'm not a big fan of these. I think these get crushed in the pocket and open too easily, but you could certainly replace that, so you can't really slag them off too much for that. It comes in as IP67, so IP just stands for ingress protection. So if you've got a light, for example, like this, where the charging port is behind a O-ringed section. You see the rubber O-ring there, and then you've got a threaded section. It increases ingress protection. Ingress protection just means how easy is it for dust or water to get in. So IP stands for ingress protection, then the first figure is dust, so this one is a 6, so dust shouldn't get in under normal working conditions. You should be okay. I mean, obviously if you fire a sandblaster at it, you're probably out of luck. And then the second figure after the 6 is 7, so it's not waterproof, it's water resistant. But it's water resistant enough. IP7's fine for a keychain light, because you generally don't take your bunch of keys and throw them into waterfalls, so that's absolutely fine. I've got no problems with that. Although I do prefer an IPX8 because it means that they're highly reliable under any water conditions, which is nice. Only has a 1 meter drop rating, which I'm very disappointed with. Most Chinese lights have like a 1.5 meter drop rating. And because this is made from a solid block of metal, I thought this would be at least a 1.5 or 2 meters, but okay, 1 meter, maybe they're just erring on the side of caution, so don't throw this around. Now this is USB chargeable, so you probably think, well, where on earth is the charging port? Well, quite cleverly, if you pull this, it's here. So I quite like that design. Now what it means is, if you've got this on keys, you've got to take your whole bunch of keys, and you sound like someone who's just won at Vegas, and you've got a pocket full of dimes and you're jingling around. Whereas what you can do on this is leave this attached to the keys, and because of the 2 neodymium magnets, you can just boosh. And you probably think, well, does this fall off? No, that's pretty secure. I think I did look it up, and the pull rate on this, in other words, how much you would need to pull this, how much weight, it was something like 2.5 kilograms. So that's pretty substantial for a keychain light. It just means you can detach this and use it, and then attach it again. So I really like that. And there's your charging port, and I'll quickly show you that. It's a micro USB. I'm not very happy with that. I prefer new lights to use type C, because everything I own uses type C apart from really old stuff and old flashlights. So I'd prefer to see them do that, but with it being a new one, but I'm not going to whinge too much. This will certainly provide enough charge for a small battery like this. So you plug it in here like that, and then it flashes. Now when it stops flashing and you get a continuous blue light, what it means is it's fully charged. Now you probably, you can see there much better when I hold it up there. You've got these accented holes at the side which show the light when it's charged as well, which I thought was very nice. And that's on when you're running. One thing that was a little bit disappointing was I noticed, I'll try and get close up, there you go. Can you see these 3 dots here where the lights come through? I would have preferred a battery check system where 3 means it's 100%, 2 illuminated means half, and maybe 1 dot is, say, 25 or 20% of the battery. But they haven't really done that. They've literally just cut 3 holes, and they don't necessarily indicate anything because light comes through all of them. Maybe they were going to do that originally, and they kept the same shell design but changed the UI. I don't know, but that's what I would like to see them do in future, because I think that would be quite a cool feature. You could just quickly look, although there is a battery check feature, and I'll show you how to do it in a second here. So that is there. They're saying that this is a non-PWM light. Pulse width modulation, if you remember from my video I did on the Rovivon, this had quite apparent pulse width modulation. If I'll turn it on, you can sometimes see it. You can't see it at that brightness level. Maybe if I put it on a lower one. Let's try a lower level. Yeah, there. Can you see on my hand? You see those lines going up and down? That's caused by the pulse width modulation, if I can say that without spitting out my false teeth. So if you want to know more about that, go to the Rovivon A8 Aurora review, which is what this is, and I explain that, and I show this in slow motion, and I explain what's going on here. So they're avoiding that with the design of the Tip2, so it shouldn't have that. They're saying it uses constant brightness, which is much better. You shouldn't have any of that apparent to the eye, which can be very irritating at times. Okay, so battery check. Let's go over how that works. So for battery check, you press the mode button once. So you've got 2 buttons. You've got, if I can get to focus, you've got your power button there, and then mode. So you press your mode button once, and then you get a flash. So those 3 flashes there. Okay, so 3 flashes means there is more than 50% battery. If you get 2 flashes, there's less than 50% battery, and if you get just 1 flash, they're saying there is less than 10% of the battery. You must charge it immediately. Like I say, I wish they'd just used these little 3 dots. It just seems why put them there and then have to do daft battery checks like that? But never mind, not the end of the world. Okay, so before I show you the basic functions of this, I just want to explain something. There's two modes on this. You have a demo mode and a daily mode. On a demo mode, which is how this comes out of the box, it will only run for 30 seconds. So if I turn this on, right there, that's the light on. Imagine the scenario, you've just bought this, you don't understand demo mode and daily mode, okay? So imagine this scenario. So you put this light on, you put it up, you get up a shelf in the dark, okay? And then you're just about to put up a painting or do whatever in an emergency, and this is on a shelf helping you out, and you think, right, nothing can go wrong. Nothing can go wrong in this scenario. I've got my Nitecore, I've got the light on. Safety is #1 priority, as the Russian hacker would say. And then the light goes out and you fall, also the proverbial fly off the ladder and snap your neck. I'm not really sure, I'm not a big fan of that system. I understand why it exists, and I'll explain when I go over the other mode. The other mode, which you can change, so you just hold both buttons, and if you watch, see the two flashes? So we're now in daily mode. If you did want to go back, hold them again. One flash is back to demo mode, but I'm going to go to daily. There. So we're in daily mode. In daily mode, it will continuously run. The reason they have these two daft modes is, in demo mode, the thinking is, if this is in your pocket and it accidentally goes off and it's in demo mode, at least the battery will only waste 30 seconds worth of power. The problem is, I would rather that it had an e-lockout. In other words, I don't know, 5 presses or 4 presses to lock it out or hold a button or do something like that. That to me would make more sense than daily mode. And put it this way, if you say to a non-flashaholic, here's a new torch, careful, it's in demo mode, they'll walk away and scratch their head and say, what? And then they'll go through that scenario where the light will go out. For flashaholics, it's not a problem, and I'm probably overstating it, but it doesn't make any sense to the standard consumer. Just have an e-lockout. I don't understand why I need all these daily modes and things, but okay, that's what they've decided to do. Okay, so let's quickly go through some of the modes. So hold this on. So you've got to press and hold to do it. Now, I'm a big fan of that, and I know some people hate that. Some people want it to immediately go on, but again, they're trying to save battery. In other words, if this gets knocked on by accident, it's less likely when you've got to press and hold. Okay, so, and if you notice, that's going back to the mode that I used, because it does include memory mode, so it remembers the last mode you used. So we'll go through, right. So there's your main setting. So it starts at 1 lumen, which gives you about 55 hours on this battery. I think that's pretty good. Look, I mean, that puts out quite enough. You could read a map or do something without annoying people, and that gives you a super extended runtime. And then mode takes it to medium. And medium is, now, although that's only 30 lumens, that looks pretty good. Now that'll give you 8 hours, so that's fantastic. And that's pretty bright there, that's whitening out the lens there. And then your next mode is high, so it takes it right up to 200 lumens. I think they've picked sensible figures here. 1's brilliant, 1 or sub lumen should always be your lowest. 30's fine, 200 to 300 gets most jobs done around the house. So I think by picking 200, they've done that right here. Now that gives you about 1 hour 15 minutes. And I think that's a nice sort of floody beam there. I mean, there's an obvious shape apparent here, but that's because you've got two emitters together. But I think they've done a damn good job on these TIRs to smooth it out so it doesn't look too silly. You're not just getting a rectangle like a letterbox. So they've done a pretty good job. And then if you want turbo, now the weird thing is with turbo, you can't access it normally. You've got to press and hold the mode button. But the problem is you can't press it and let go and it'll continue to do it. You have to keep your hand on it there. So that's pretty bright, as you can see. That's turbo, and that's 720 lumens, but you only get 15 minutes. And you would only get 15 minutes if the heat step down didn't come in. So what will happen is, if this gets too hot, now I feel like getting quite hot, if this gets too hot, it will step down automatically. In other words, the circuitry says, I can no longer maintain this. I'm going to drop from 720 lumens, I'm going to drop significantly so the heat dissipates. And that's still going up. Because it's very cold where I am, I had difficulties getting the temp step down to log in, but okay, that feature is there and it's nice to have. So I'm going to put that back on, and I'm quite impressed. I like the body. I don't understand why you need daily modes and other modes. Just have an e-lockout, keep it simple. I don't know what's the point of that. It's almost like they're saying, well, look, you've got to press and hold for it to go on, but also we're going to have a daily mode. Make your mind up, just put an e-lockout. It's not the end of the world. It's still a nice light. I think these TIRs have done an excellent job. I really like it. I'll give it a mark, and then I'll give you a quick compare, just sizes and things like that. So let's get this out of the way. Okay, so double emitter, nice TIR, solid body. I think this feature is fantastic. I love that. Brilliant. I wish it was Type-C USB, but I know there'll be certain commenters on the channel who'll say, stop going on about Type-C. But I think for new lights now in nearly 2020, I think they should be making that effort. I wish the drop rating was a bit higher, and it's not IPX8, but it can't be with this mechanism. The output's absolutely incredible. I mean, 720 on turbo, that's absolutely fantastic for something this size, even though you only get 15 minutes, but you can only use it momentarily anyway. So I think they've done a pretty good job. There's not a lot I don't like about it, other than I would change the UI, maybe make use of these 3 dots instead of just having them as a cosmetic measure. Maybe that was an initial plan and they kept the shell but didn't come up with a UI, I don't know. I think they've done a damn good job. I think it should be a little bit cheaper though, but they've done a damn good job. I'm going to give this, for what it is, and it's a keychain light, it feels premium, looks nice. Only a few things I would change. I love the output for the size. Love the neodymium magnet setup here, fantastic. USB rechargeable. I'm going to have to give this a 9, because a lot of the things I'm slagging off, most people don't really care about anyway. So I think they've done a damn fine job. I think they've made a nice, sleek, beautiful looking light here. I really like what they've done here. And on a set of keys, I mean, I've carried this for a week and a half. I try a week and a half to 2 weeks before I start making decisions on things. I mean, look, the paint's done absolutely fine. There's a few little bits coming off. There's a bit there. There was another bit actually when I put it on the desk, I noticed, but it's done fine. It's done really good. It's a bit like the jet beams where they have a really good coating that just doesn't come off. So 9 out of 10, well done. So let's have a little bit of a comparison. A couple of others. So you could look at the, I mean, for half the price, you could get the original tip, but look at the size difference. I mean, if you take that off, look, substantial size difference there in height. Width are very similar, and the output, I mean, this is 360 maximum output, whereas this is 720. Massive update there. So much better, but obviously the price is double. So that's just an option you can do. If you wanted a cheap one, you could just get the original tip. You could compare it to the Nitecore Tiny, which is tiny. I mean, look, much smaller. 380 on the output, but a smaller battery than the tip, so it doesn't last as long. But look, you're still getting a lovely, and it's a TIR lens using the method that the Claris uses. If you remember, I showed you the Claris there. It's using like a faceted output on the TIR, but TIR lenses save a lot of space. So if you want, this is much lighter. I mean, this is about half the weight of this. But battery is probably not going to last as long, and this just feels much more premium. This is stamped metal again, both sides. So there's another option. And then you've got the Rovivon, you know, pulse width modulation issues aside, it's actually quite a nice light, and it uses the Nitecore 219 LED, which gives you a beautiful color reproduction, absolutely beautiful. I just wish they would change some of this, and maybe it's the UI, but the output's certainly nowhere near this. But it's a high, I mean, the price of that's much higher, but as you can see, it's very small and compact, and it does have additional features of LEDs on the side. I'm not going to go into that too much. I'm just giving you a quick comparison. If you wanted something even smaller, you could go for the Claris Mini one. Very small, but certainly not as light. You're only getting about 100 to 120 lumens out of this, so very low, and the battery's tiny. I'll show you. If you remember, this is 500 milliamp hours. Look at this. This is a 10180 battery. I mean, look at the size of that. It's about the size of my fingernail. And off the top of my head, this one is I might not even have it on, actually. I don't think it does, but it's certainly not big. I'll put it on the screen here, the capacity of a 10180. Yeah, so as you can see, totally different capacity. So let's pop that back in there. But that's just an option. If you wanted something absolutely minuscule, you could go for the Claris. I've never had any problems with Claris, although I notice a lot of people start slagging them off these days. Lumen Top EDC1, beautiful light. I love the grip. Again, TIR and a beautiful beam. Just a really nice piece of kit. Feels premium. But again, you're not getting nowhere near the output of the Lumen Top. So pop that to one side. If you wanted to go for really cheap stuff, you could go for the Nitecore Tube. Now here's the Nitecore Tube, but as I say, the light's willy-nilly, it goes all over the shop. but this is very cheap, but it's also USB rechargeable, which is nice, but that's like a cheap option. If you just bear with me a few seconds, I'll just close the door there because it sounds like some idiots having a party. Another option would be the Mech Army. I think this is the 4X, if I can find it here, the X4S. Beautiful little light, but it's in the same sort of realms as the Claris Mini one. A little bit more expensive, but again, that uses a TIR, but it's a TIR similar to the setup here. As you can see, slightly wider bowl, so that's that there, you can see that. So a nice little light, but again, you're not going to get the output that you're going to get on this, but it's a little bit cheaper. You could go for what I presume to be the copy of the Nitecore Tip, which is the Astrolux K1, but it's got extra daft features like you've got a UV and a red light and things like that, stuff people generally don't use. But the thing with this is it's got a smooth reflector, so if I can get that to go, there you go. So the smooth reflector is probably not best for close-up stuff. As you can see, it's obscuring detail, and it's relatively heavy as well. I find this very heavy. That's probably, it's getting up to the weight of that, but look at the size, it's massive. It's a huge hunk of metal, that. It's a bit like comparing an AK to a nice sort of slimmed down carbon fibre M15. Okay, and then another couple of options, just if you were interested, is the keychain light, which is the TrueNight Ti3. Beautiful, runs on a AAA, like most of the smaller ones here, runs on a AAA. Never had any problems, very reliable. The only problem is these are rotary action, in other words, there's no button, so to use them you tighten them, and then the UI advances by doing that, as you can see. Now this also has a strobe mode, if I can get it to work. There, also has a strobe mode, whereas this doesn't. I'm not sure why that doesn't actually. They could probably add one by just changing the UI and adding an E-lockout, but they've chosen not to do that. Or if you want to go for mega cheap, I mean, you can get one of these for like $5 to $10. Is the Astrolux A01, which is actually quite nice. It's got quite a nice emitter, cheap. There's a little bit of pulse width modulation going on there. You may or may not see on the camera there. If I put it on the low setting, you might see it easier. No, you can't see it, but not very apparent anyway. So pretty nice, cheap, but very blocky and heavy. And your other option could be the JetBeam Jet U, which is a lovely piece of kit, nice finish on it, and it also uses a TIR setup to save space, but again, it's a rotary action and it uses a AAA. So anyway, they're just some little things I wanted to show you so you could think about. So put them to one side. So well done, Nitecore. Nitecore Tip2, I think they've certainly bettered the tip, which is the one on the bottom there. They've done a good job. I would just change a few things, in my personal humble opinion. And again, I've said this many times and I'll keep saying it. I'm not an expert and I never claim to be an expert. I just want to give an honest opinion. So that's my honest opinion, 9 out of 10. So enough of me waffling on like an idiot. It's time to go outside and I'll show you what this thing looks like outside. And I'll maybe compare the beam shot to a few more of the keychain lights.